Text Talks.
Hello
And welcome to Text Talks. I'm Alex,
I'm Katie.
and today we're going to be talking about the Adbhuta Ramayana.
The Adbhuta Ramayana, that's right. So you may have come across the Ramayana already. It's on a few of the course specifications. You probably haven't come across this Ramayana yet. So before we start, I will say it's worth going back and looking at some of our other podcasts and resources. So we've had a podcast on Dharma in the Ramayana that covers the story of the Ramayana, the more traditional understanding of the Ramayana. So that could be a good place to start and before coming to this podcast. Also, we've also released a podcast on retellings of the epics. The Adbhuta is a retelling of the epic, the Ramayana. So again, that might be a useful set of podcasts and resources to look at before coming to this one. But I will go through all the stories to make sure it's easy to understand, even if you haven't looked at those. So if you don't have time, don't worry too much. Just consider going back to those at some point. So what we're going to do today is, like I say, tell the story of the Adbhuta. And what this will do is provide, hopefully, a useful example for you in your exams and covering different parts of course content and from the course specifications. So I did have a look, as we always do for our podcasts, about what courses actually want you to have examples from or be able to talk knowledgeably about. So what the Adbhuta will provide is understanding of the Ramayana itself, the story, which is important. I'm going to have examples that could be used for religious experience as some of the events that happen in the story. Understanding Rama and how he is an avatar of Vishnu and how he's an ideal man. Philosophy, different philosophical influences on the text. So we're going to talk about Advaita Vedanta, non-dualism, the soul and a personal God. We're going to look at the role of women. And we're going to look at Shakti, which is the creative power of the goddess.
So the Adbhuta Ramayana offers a lot for people doing Hinduism at A level, basically. It's on a lot of the specifications, it covers lots of the same themes.
Exactly. It can just be, well, it's not on any particular specification as the Adbhuta Ramayana. It's a telling of the Ramayana and can be used as an example for a lot of different themes that you need to be knowledgeable on. So hopefully this will be interesting, and also it's a really fun story, so it's just quite a memorable one if you want to, keep some interesting examples. So I will start trying to be as brief as possible by telling the story of the Ramayana and then how the Adbhuta's version of the story is slightly different. Well, quite different actually. So the Ramayana tells the story of Rama, who is an incarnation of Vishnu, and Prince, who is due to be king. He's exiled from the kingdom through a series of events and banished to live in the forest with his brother and his wife Sita. Now, Sita is kidnapped by the 10-headed demon Ravana, and eventually, through all kinds of adventures, Rama, with the help of his brother and the monkey called Hanuman, hunts down Ravana and defeats him in an epic battle and rescues Sita. Now, in many of the versions of the story, after rescuing Sita, Rama and Sita are reunited, but he doubts Sita's faithfulness to him because she's been living in Ravana's captivity, and he thinks that she hasn't been faithful because she's been living with another man. And so she walks through fire and she is unburnt, and that proves that she was innocent and she is pure. So they all go back to the kingdom, and then there are some grumblings among the people when Rama is king, and they are doubting his judgment and thinking, well, he took back his wife that lived with another man, he doesn't have good judgment. So he decides that in order for him to rule his king well, he banishes Sita from the kingdom. She's pregnant at the time, and many years pass, and she raises the twins that she gave birth to, along with a sage in the ashram. And then eventually Rama finds them again, and Rama invites her back to the kingdom, but says that, sort of for the sake of appearances, just so everyone else in the kingdom knows that she is innocent, can she walk through fire again? But Sita says, you know what, no, if Mother Earth, knows I am pure, then, take me into your womb. And so the earth envelops her and she disappears, and Rama goes back to the kingdom without Sita but with his sons. So that's a very, very, very brief cover of the story, and as I said in another podcast where I talked about how different tellings of the Ramayana can vary greatly, not all tellings look like this. These are generally the key themes, but especially those details regarding how Rama reacts to Sita when they're reunited, they change a lot. A really common way that detail is changed is that it's not literally Sita, it's an illusion of Sita. So while he doubts the chastity of his wife, he's not actually doubting the chastity of his wife, that's an illusion of his wife, and the real Sita is hidden away and doesn't have to face any of that. So it does change a lot, so there's a lot of variety. The Adbhuta, however, changes it by staying exactly the same as that Ramayana that I said before, that I explained before. But after Ravana has been killed, they go back to Ayodhya, just as they do in the other Ramayana. But then Rama is bragging about the fact that he killed Ravana, and Sita laughs at him, and he's like, what? Why are you laughing? I just freed you from Ravana. And she's like, oh, I shouldn't laugh, I'm really grateful, but you do realise that the 10-headed Ravana was the smaller brother of the 1,000-headed Ravana that's still out there, and you would have so much respect as a warrior if you could defeat the much larger, more fearsome Ravana. So instantly Rama gathers his army and gathers his weapons and goes straight to the 1,000-headed Ravana to kill him, to finally be the ultimate warrior. But when he gets there, he can't quite manage it, and the battle goes on for a long time with neither of them able to win, and eventually Rama faints on the battlefield, so he's just unconscious lying on the battlefield. And so a group of sages have been watching, and they cry to Sita, Sita, what are we to do? At that point, Sita, who had been watching with a serene smile, as the text says, so very calm, transforms into the goddess Kali, and she becomes terrifying to look at. Her tongue is lolling, she becomes long and gangly, horribly dishevelled hair, and then in an instant she kills Ravana with complete ease. So very, very different from Rama's struggle on the battlefield. And then there's a very long, bloodthirsty, gruesome depiction of how she celebrates on the battlefield and juggles his heads and dances on the corpses of his army, and so on. Afterwards, Rama wakes up and is terrified at first because there's this terrifying image in front of him. But he is told by gods, who were there as well, that this is Sita, that's his wife, don't be afraid, she saved you. And then Rama glorifies Sita and worships her and devotes her with 1,000 names. And at that point she grants him a wish and reveals her true divine form to him. But then, because he's so scared, he's like, please can you turn back into my lovely wife, because I'm terrified of you. So she does, and the ending is basically that they go back to Ayodhya and live the kingdom and live happily ever after. So that's quite different for a start. There's a whole extra bit to the end of the Adbhuta, and in a bit we're going to talk about how that represents different philosophical movements. But for a start, I just want to look at how Sita is characterised. So in the Adbhuta, she becomes the goddess Kali, who is the goddess of death and destruction. She's terrifying, and there's some quite dark themes there. But in the more traditional image of Sita that I described before, you don't get that kind of characterisation. And I've got a quote by David Kinsley, who was a scholar on the Hindu tradition. And he talks about the more traditional Sita, and he says, Sita is defined in the Ramayana and in the subsequent cult of Rama almost entirely in relation to her husband. She is portrayed as the ideal Hindu wife, whose every thought revolves around her husband. For Sita, Rama is the centre of her life. She's always steadfast in her loyalty to him. His welfare, reputation, and wishes are upmost in her mind. So, Alex, how is this, what are the key differences with the two Sitas that I've described here?
Well, Kinsley's Sita seems a lot less independent, because a lot of his description is about her being a wife, whereas in the Adbhuta, she's kind of her own character, and then obviously has this transformative potential to become Kali, but she's autonomous. She can kind of do her own thing, and actually it turns out that Ram needs her more than she needs Ram. I think that's what I get from it.
How you end that is exactly it. That while in the traditional image of Sita, she is quite, as Kinsley describes, dependent on Rama, or all about Rama, or her story is about being Rama's wife. Whereas in the Adbhuta, Sita becomes the main character, and in fact, at the beginning of the telling of the Adbhuta, the narrator says, Rama's story has been told before, now I will tell Sita's. And so, definitively, Sita is the main character of the Adbhuta, and she's at the centre, which means Rama becomes characterised as her husband in the same way that previously Sita has been Rama's wife. It's been Rama and his wife. In the Adbhuta, it's Sita and her husband. And this is also shown in the Adbhuta when there's a power dynamic in which Sita is more powerful than Rama, firstly seen by the fact that she transforms into Kali, defeats the 1,000-headed Ravana that Rama could not. There's a clear power dynamic there. But also with how scared Rama is when he sees Sita, and he trembles, and like I said, it's a god that has to tell him, don't be scared. But also this god, who's actually Brahma, tells Rama that all he has ever accomplished is because of Sita, and all that he is due to Sita. So it's reminding Rama that yes, he is Vishnu incarnate. This is a key point of this Ramayana, as it is of many Ramayanas. Rama is Vishnu incarnate, he is the Supreme Lord, he is divine, but he is nothing without Sita. So that further shows how important and central Sita is to this story. So perhaps one of the inspirations for why Sita is so central, or why the composers of the Adbhuta retold the story in a way that shows Sita as the main character, could be because of the influence of the Shakta tradition, which is a tradition which celebrates the goddess. So in the Adbhuta, Sita is Lakshmi, which she is in other Ramayanas as well, but she's also very specifically the goddess, and by that I mean God, but the feminine version of it, so also known as Devi. And this supreme divinization of Sita is shown in multiple ways. She's glorified by lots of different characters, so Rama, as well as other gods, as well as the narrator of the text, opens with a glorification to her. But specifically, I want to talk about her divine revelation and how that shows how supreme she is. So after Rama has woken up and realised, okay, this is my wife, wow, she looks terrifying, but, gets on board with that, he asks that, can he see her true form? And so Sita grants him divine sight. And this is something that appears in other texts. If you are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna grants Arjuna divine sight so he can witness the full divine form of Krishna. And this is, in a way, this scene is very similar to that, even to the extent that it might have been influenced by the Bhagavad Gita. But Sita as Kali grants Rama divine sight, and he experiences her full form, and he is terrified, and he asks that she change back to her pleasant form. And I just thought that this would be an interesting example if you're looking at religious experience in Hinduism. Divine revelations happen in lots and lots of different texts, so that's always a great one to look for, because they also describe how the devotee, in this case Rama, reacts and how terrified they are. So that might be interesting for an example for your exams. But Sita's not the only one to have a divine revelation in the Adbhuta, because Rama also has a divine revelation earlier in the story when he first comes across the monkey Hanuman, who helps him find Sita. Hanuman asks who he is, and so Rama reveals his divine form and delivers teaching, which I'll talk about in a bit. But mostly the point is that he's saying that he is the supreme God, and he's telling Hanuman that.
So I thought you said that Sita was more important. Does that mean that they're both equal, or?
Yeah, so it's a yes and no, because we've got two divine revelations fairly close together in the text, and both Rama and Sita in those revelations claim to be God. And also, the text elsewhere does literally say Rama and Sita are complete equals. So, as the narrator introduces the story, he says that, yeah, they are complete equals and no one is better than the other. But then we do have a story that prioritises Sita a lot more and tells her story. And, okay, it's saying that they're complete equals, but Rama can't kill Ravana, and Sita can, and she transforms into Kali, who is terrifying and incredibly powerful. So there does seem to be an inequality between them in which Sita is more powerful. Also, while there are two divine revelations, Rama's comes before Sita's, and the effect from that is we learn as readers that Rama is incredibly divine, but then when he experiences Sita's divine form, he cannot handle it, and he very much plays the role of a human. Now, it could be that because we know how divine he is, the fact that he is trembling before Sita shows just how divine and powerful and supreme Sita is, especially in that particular form. But also, it shows that, you know, while this particular text is explaining how divine Sita is, Rama is also divine, and the Adbhuta doesn't intend to undo any of the work that other Ramayanas have done to show Rama as Vishnu incarnate and as the Supreme Lord. It's not contradicting that. What it's doing is just showing a different side of the story, specifically Sita's side, and to do that it's going to show Sita's power more, because we already know about Rama's power. We already have read all those Ramayanas. All those Ramayanas have already been written. This Ramayana is telling Sita's story.
So the divinization of Sita in the Adbhuta shows an influence of Shakta philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other major influences that we can also see in this story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, interestingly, in Rama's divine revelation, he talks a lot about many different philosophies, and it's quite long, and it's very interesting to see how the text incorporates lots of philosophical movements. So namely, it covers Sankhya, or Samkhya as you might know it, Advaita, Vedanta, and even influence from the Vedas. So, for example, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but definitely make sure you look at the accompanying PowerPoint to have a few more examples that you might be able to use in exams. So Rama talks about the nature of the self. That's a big chunk of his teaching. He uses that to also talk about himself and how he is the supreme self, which refers to him being God. And the way he talks about this is really interesting, and he actually uses a method that we find in the Vedas, which is the method of negation. So rather than, when explaining the self, rather than saying, well, it is this, or, you know, it is a soul, or it is, you know, part of Brahman, he realizes that it's just impossible to explain, and therefore all you can do is explain what it is not. So he says, well, it's not this, and it's not this, and it's not this, and by explaining all the things that something is not, you can get an idea of the, firstly, indescribability of it, but also of what it might be. And like I said, this is something that we see in the Vedas, such as the Upanishads, and it's something that Rama does here. So that's really interesting and a great place to look for examples of what the soul is. He also talks about non-dualism, so he argues that to see the world through a dualist perspective is illusory, and that, you know, anyone who does that does not truly understand the world. He also talks about Purusha and Prakriti, which are key themes regarding the nature of existence found in Sankhya Yoga. So as you can see, he covers a lot of different philosophies. So while the key themes in the Adbhuta is on Shakta, because most of it is about gender, it's about Sita, and it's about swapping the focus of the Ramayana away from Rama and towards the perspective of a woman, there are also other themes and other philosophies weaved into its story. So it's definitely multifaceted, and it's doing a lot. But yeah, definitely look at the PowerPoints for specific examples and to get some quotes for your exams. And I think that's it for today.
Wow. Well, thank you, Katie, for bringing the Adbhuta to our attention. It sounds like there's a lot of things that students out there could use from it in order to answer certain aspects of their exams, even if it's not specifically saying you need to know the Adbhuta. It has a lot to offer.
Yeah, with a just interesting story alongside.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, feel free to contact us on Facebook at Text Talks or on Twitter at Text Talks 1. And we will see you next week.